You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1122, titled Time is Right. And Travis, it's too easy. Of course I'm going to say that the time is always right when it comes to talking One Piece with you.
That's so sweet of you to say, especially since we're getting this out on time for once.
That's right. We're talking about this on a Sunday. Usually we don't until Tuesday, but like I said, the time is right. Like, let's go. As usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you've not yet read chapter 1122, get out of here. Go do that now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked in the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are available to read for free up to 3 weeks after their official release. But if you'd like to check out the entire One Piece manga library online, digitally, and all that good stuff, you can subscribe to Shonen Jump, which we always recommend. Okay, Travis Hymas. You know, I was looking at this picture of Smoker, and I was thinking to myself, I want to smoke some of my friends at One Piece Theories, and I had an interesting idea about that.
Oh, what was this idea?
I was thinking that maybe I would go onto our handy-dandy Discord, the One Piece Spoilers Discord, and I would just start being extremely egotistical about times I'm right about One Piece theories and predictions.
You know, I gotta say, that's probably a really good idea because you've been batting 1,000 lately. Like, you've been batting them so... You've been doing so well that I can't even cut most of them down.
This is sarcasm because
it's like
the setup here is
Zoro.
Okay, no, because
I'm stronger.
I got a bunch of L's this week. That's the setup. Lots of L's for John. And so me going into the Discord and smoking fools, I'm the only fool getting smoked is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's fine because that's why we're here. We're here to see me fail. That's for sure. And we, of course, know Oda-sensei listens to the show and is like, well, I got to change this. John needs humbling. And that's more important than my grand epic saga.
Of course, it's always been that way.
But yeah, no, you can hang out on our Discord. If you're listening and you're still not in the Discord, I don't know what's going to take, but that's fine. We do have our email too, rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. Do you want me to say it again, Travis?
Yeah, you better say it again so I can write it down.
rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. One more time? Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm feeling it. rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. You're right. Yeah.
You know, it's the name of the show that just it makes so much sense.
Speaking of things making sense, let's talk about something that doesn't make sense. Smoker on the cover of well, it makes sense because I get it. It's supposed to be like a fun kind of connection. Do you want to explain this? The connection to My Hero Academia?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite little anecdotes.
It's cool.
It's just kind of a statement about how influential Oda has been to his contemporaries, but also it's kind of just wild to think about in context. So this is a redraw of a image submitted to the old Usopp's art gallery section of the SBS way back, literally 22 years ago, like it says in the caption here. And that little fan artist just so happened to be Kohei Horikoshi, who would go on to write and draw and, as of this week, finish My Hero Academia. So this is Oda kind of paying respects to that accomplishment. That's the reason it says Hiroaka in the smoke, because in the original piece it says One Piece. It's really, really sweet to see and kind of have that come full circle. This is not the only manga that paid tribute this week in its cover pages and everything. It's really just wild to see that, like, Horikoshi did some art because he loved One Piece and it inspired him to become a mangaka, and now you're seeing that happen for a whole new generation, and even having the people who came before also paying respects, because seeing a series go for over 400 chapters and then ending it, like, that's a huge accomplishment, especially since Horikoshi has gotten sick and stuff before. So it's a triumph, and it's very fun to see this kind of celebration here.
That's right. That's the big news this week, that My Hero Academia has just ended its 10-year run, and it kind of wild to me because, I mean, we've been amping up maybe a My Hero Academia conversation coming up. If I don't make it to that, because I'm not caught up on the manga, so I might not be able to be the guy. to me, it's just wild that My Hero is ending, because I've always just felt like it's just getting started in terms of the story, which is probably my frustration with it and why I just drop off, is because I felt like after a certain point, the progression just kind of stopped, and then it got totally muddled in its like final third of the story, to which I feel like it's ending really, like I still am in disbelief, because I'm like, there's so much that they could have done with that entire, I don't know. I just feel like it was a great shonen. I enjoyed it quite a bit for several years. And, I'm happy for, for everybody involved, for it to kind of reach its due and reach a conclusion. It's actually ending. I'm always a fan of things ending on the terms of the mangaka.
Yeah. And what's really fun is he said in a recent interview that was translated by Viz as well, so we got it here, that he has no intentions to do a sequel. We're not going to get a Boruto to Deku, or anything like that. This is it. He's done. Probably going to go. I mean, he basically doesn't have to work anymore, right? But it's nice to see. And I will say, credit where it is due in terms of the ending, and this is a whole separate conversation. I do think that in the final kind of like part of its last arc and a half, because surprise, there was an epilogue arc instead of a single chapter to close the story out. I think he really manages to pull it together. There's a moment in the story that I think for most people, it's a make or break moment, and that's a whole separate conversation. But it all does manage to come together, even if it's not the ending, necessarily people thought when they were going into the story originally. To say that he didn't know where he was going or anything, that's not true. This is very much the story that he wanted to tell, and it's very impressive that he got to do it.
Yeah, there you go. So, may not be to my liking, but that doesn't matter because a lot of people love it. So that is more important. All right. So that's the cover. Great tribute. Loved it. Let's get into the chapter proper. Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. So this chapter, again, it's called Time is Right. And it's definitely an interesting one, just in terms of really how, there are a lot of big bombshells here. We start with the broadcast is continuing, which, okay. I think that we did have a conversation where I don't remember who said what between you and me, but I remember I left the door open where I was like, I feel like it feels like the end, but like maybe a little bit more. And I think you're like, right. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. So there you go. But we start more with like the reactions to things. Like some people are being like, wait, a pirate is gonna, control the world. Because if you remember, the last chapter ended with, we see that shot of like the 4 emperors, and then we see like Sabo and Dragon and Emu and Shanks' evil twin maybe, and all that stuff. And the idea is that whoever finds a One Piece is going to control the world, and people are like, wait, what? No, a pirate? I guess the assumption there is because pirates are trying to find the One Piece, it becomes this kind of like crisis of like, that's bad, that somebody's yelling like, do something, Navy, and we're going to sink into the ocean, all that stuff. But yeah, so then we do see pirates, though, of course, who are like, all right, it's like further affirmation that the One Piece exists. And then a bunch of other people are like, we got to go get it. And I think for us, like, we always take for granted that, we know that the One Piece is a thing. But a lot of people in the world of the story, to them, it's like, it's still just something that was relayed by Roger, sort of, and spread by other people. It's one of those things where like the One Piece is real is still kind of like this kind of cry, this kind of thing you have to have some faith in. But the fact that Vegapunk is like lending credence to this, Vegapunk who's super popular and in the world and all that, that's kind of what's riling up the world. It's like the second, we talked about this, it's like the second kind of mark of celebration, or whatever you want to call it, or the ushering in of the Great Pirate Era. That's more what I'm trying to say. But of course, some people, a lot of evil people are just being like, yeah, pirates are going to rule the world. And so that's kind of we go to Impel Down, and the prisoners, we find out that the reason the prisoners are able to hear the broadcast is because they have snails in their cells and they can't control the snails giving the broadcast. So that finally kind of explains why we just saw like Magellan and Doflamingo, like why they were just chilling listening to this. It was kind of a weird thing, but there you go. But anyway, so we get all that, and we get that reaction. We also get to Koby. And Koby kind of has an interesting, here's a John L, because I was kind of like, Koby's going to be on Luffy's side. But he's like, no, like Koby's sitting there listening to this, and he resolves that he has to make sure that Luffy does not accomplish his dream. We get a flashback to like chapter 2 or 3 of the manga, which is just insane. And Koby's remembering that this is what Luffy wants, that he's after the One Piece. He wants to be king of the pirates. And so up to this point, Koby's been a like live and let live kind of person, a little that Romeo and Juliet, Luffy, you're over here, our love can never be. But he's been kind of like, at least he's one of the, the nicer pirates, and he's been a big help. But Koby's like, no, I cannot let a pirate, even, my friend, I cannot let him control the world because he's so true to his values. That said, I still think that ultimately Koby's going to come around, but it's not going to be as easy as I thought. I was a bit more under the assumption that Koby would be a little bit more pragmatic, but he does still see Luffy as an evil pirate in some ways. I guess that's the fair thing.
It lends a lot more credence to that final page last week, because we were like, oh, well, you have Koby, and then you have Akainu, and then you have Emu, you have all these, kind of similarly aligned members of the government and the Marines. Well, now we're seeing some more initiative. I would imagine that this is happening elsewhere too, where there are other characters now like, okay, now I have an option to do something that I didn't have before. It's like lighting a new spark, like you said, kind of starting a new era where this is no longer just the Great Pirate era, but this is like literally the race for the One Piece now. Like it has started, and now we have new challengers, which is, pretty cool, because Koby kind of needs something to do. We've talked about him having different roles, but they all kind of come back to Luffy and trying to like tie that whole storyline up. Having them have to finally go to blows is kind of the I guess the organic conclusion of that, right?
Yeah, and shout out to the anime. The anime's right in the middle of the Koby and Garp stuff, or just kick that off. And I'm so excited to see this week's episode, just because, we're about to see Garp do his big move at the beginning of that whole thing. And we've gotten a bit of Koby so far, running around Hachinosu. It's been fun. But anyway, speaking of great pirates and new challengers, we do cut to Buggy, and we kind of get Buggy's reaction. We don't hear the first thing, but apparently everybody's just like, oh, the world's going to belong to you, Chairman Buggy. But he responds like, the world's mine. Who said I wanted such a thing? And then everyone's like, wait, what? And then he like improvises that he's like, the world is ours. And so everyone starts freaking out and swooning over him. But then, of course, we get our comedic, like Crocodile and Mihawk are just like, sit down,
I want to call out the translation here, because it's such a good way of putting a sound to words, because they translate it as German Baggy, because they're crying. It's so good.
Baggy. Yeah,
exactly. It's such a good way to communicate that across languages. What a great job.
Absolutely. And I don't want to forget this, so we got to come back to it later, but I have a totally new kind of pocket theory for everything with the Buggy stuff and Shanks and all that. So TBD on that. It's technically another John L, because it kind of contradicts something else I was thinking before, but that's fine. That's what we're here to do. Okay, so we then cut over another John L, because I thought that the Caribou and Blackbeard stuff was like settled and that we would just off screen all that. But no, we do get kind of like a denouement of Caribou, who, if you recall, he basically said to Katarina Devon and Van Auger, like, oh, I have this, intel for Blackbeard. And we cut away from that, and I was like, oh, so I guess that like is the assumption is that they like are like, okay, sure, and then we wouldn't see him for a while. But no, we actually get, for some weird reason, we get the like resolution to that apparently they reached out to Blackbeard about this, and we're like, oh, hey, can you want us to do this? And he's like, yeah, sure. Blackbeard apparently thinks that if Caribou's information, which remember is about the ancient weapons and the identity of one of them, then we'll just blow him away if his information is no good. So I'm not sure why this is in this chapter. I feel like we really don't need it, but
I think it's just an excuse to kind of place where they are still, because they're still in the area, and for things that are about to happen later in the chapter, it might help to have some. This is a surprisingly well geographically accurate chapter compared to what we've had the past few chapters as well. I finally know where everybody is standing at any given point. So I think just given what's about to happen, it's nice to know that they're still in the area.
That's right, yeah. And then we go to the broadcast, and Vegapunk says, that is simply the truth. Joy Boy is, and then boom, we finally get what appears to be the destruction of the Den Mushi that is doing the broadcast, the like triangle one. And so we see Weatheria land this really powerful blow on Emmet. Although, sorry, technically the message says hiss, like HIS, and then it gets cut off. So Joy Boy is his, and we don't know what that means. So all guesses are as good as other guesses on what that is going after.
Yep.
I think purposely obtuse and vague. But yeah, we see the giants are kind of reacting to this, that Emmet, the Iron Giant, has been really like blown apart at this point and is on death's door. We also see that the Thousand Sunny is still flying through the air, kind of over all the flames and destruction of Egghead Island. We do see Nasjuro also make a reappearance, and folks on the Thousand Sunny, we can assume like Usopp or Nami or Chopper, are saying that they see him again. They want Zoro to do something. Zoro gears up for an attack, but it's not looking great because it looks like Nasjuro is in position to do some serious damage. And then we cut back to Emmet, and Emmet says, "Sorry, Joy Boy." Luffy reappears. Luffy was like right by the Thousand Sunny too at this point, or like kind of in between the Thousand Sunny and what is that name of the ship? The Great Eric or something? The giant pirate ship, yeah. So like Luffy's like right there, and he's like, "Oh, giant Robo!" And the Iron Giant says that, "I wanted to apologize. Deep down, I knew that you couldn't still be alive." And so Luffy's like still kind of confused. And remember that nobody else can hear this but Luffy. Like this is a voice of all things thing apparently. And so Luffy finally understands like, oh, okay, so you're confusing me with someone else. So like it's just taken Luffy a minute to figure this out. That basically Joy Boy thought, or Emmet thought that he was Joy Boy. He says, "You look so much like him." Brings back the warm feelings I had that day. I'm sorry, Joy Boy. We see Saturn kind of repiecing himself back together after he was attacked before. It looks like that he's still like he's not in the water. He's like on the shore. So he's able to survive that. It looked like he was catapulted toward the water, but we could maybe surmise that he made it to the coast without touching the water.
Like I said, I mean, he got hit pretty hard. So like Luffy's punches do tend to have the pushback effect. So, but again, the geography is helpful. This has been needed for a few weeks now.
Right, because you and I were kind of going back and forth of like, how far in the sea are they? I think you were saying like they're really close to the coast. And I was like, it seems like they're not, but you were right because we see the coast now, and like the depth of it could be a panel thing. So maybe the anime will be even clearer, but we do see the coast at this point. We see all the marine ships, or at least the ones that are still standing or floating rather. And then we see most of the Gorosei in position on the shore. In fact, I think we might see all of them right there because I know we see Weatheria, Nasjuro, Saturn, Jupiter.
All the ones that are still there.
Right. You're right. Because one of them is not still there, which we'll get to. And so then Emmet says, "Sorry that I couldn't make you king." And then someone mentions that the earthworm monster, who is of course Jupiter, is about to swallow the Sunny whole. And then Luffy's kind of confused because he's like, "King, you know." So apparently Emmet was trying to make Joy Boy king, which is a massive kind of revelation actually. And so then Emmet asks Luffy what his name is. And he says, "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man will be king of the pirates," trademark. And then the giant starts laughing a little bit, like a kind of goofy little laugh. And he's like, "Hey, Luffy, thank you for letting me hear that old familiar rhythm." And he starts letting off what Luffy acknowledges as Conqueror's haki, color of the Supreme King. And also another little hint that apparently it might not have been the drums of liberation that powered the Iron Giant. It just kind of like woke him up or stirred him out of just familiarity, if nothing else. So there's something going on there too, actually, that we could read into. And then Emmet says, "Don't die, okay? I won't let you die." We see this massive burst of haki, and it's extremely powerful, definitely different from other haki we've seen before, including Color of the Supreme King haki. Doll is one of the few Marines that doesn't seem to be affected by it, but is like still kind of haggard by it, calls it such powerful haki. One of the other vice admirals, I forget his name, I don't even remember if we got his name, he kind of is trying to figure out, you know, who could be doing such a thing and all that. And this haki is so powerful, it actually reverts the Gorosei back into their human forms. All of them go back through, or all of them but Saturn, get sent back through the summoning circle in Marijoa. And we immediately see that they're all there again. One of them was already there, the one who was sent flying earlier by Luffy and Bonnie, actually, Itsumade. So that kind of confirms a few things. It wasn't all L's for John, because I put it out there that there might be a time limit, or there might be something involved with, like, you have to do something to them for them to kind of, like, there has to be a weakness to this. And we finally figure out what the weakness is.
I think we've got it now, yep.
Yes, so it's clear at this point, I think, that none of the Gorosei were really there. They were there in kind of like a corporeal form almost. And that
I have further theories on this too.
What it seems to be is that because Saturn is the only one who doesn't get sent back. Saturn went there in person, and so that is the limitation of this. That settles what you and I were like, how did, like, they can do this summoning thing, like that makes them so invincible. They can go anywhere, they can teleport. What are you doing? But no, it's confirmed, which I think we both suspected, and we're hoping that this wouldn't be too broken, right? Is that because Saturn was there, he was able to open up a summoning circle, and then they opened up a summoning circle in Marijoa, and they were able to go, at least temporarily, forward through that. And what disrupted that was a certain type of powerful haki, and that is their weakness ultimately.
It's got to be a devil fruit. This is the important reveal, because if it's a devil fruit ability that allows them to summon each other, it's like Dark Souls. You can bring in a character from, somebody else's character to help you temporarily, by linking up a connection. That seems to be what's happened.
It is Saturn, just like Dark Souls, yeah.
Yeah. Saturn brought them there, and because it was through his power, when that all got nullified by this haki release, which was through that knot that Emmet untied specifically. This isn't Emmet's haki, as we'll see in a second. But through that, their transformations were nullified, the summoning circle was nullified, they were sent back, and there was even potentially a feedback loop that happened.
Yep, and so as we all know, devil fruit can be overridden, as you say, by haki, and so that really drives home the idea that this is some kind of devil fruit. It can be a special one. It can be one that's obviously different from the norm, but all evidence is really pointing to that being the case. But okay, we also get this kind of interesting sort of moment with Emu and another silhouette in the butterfly garden. We don't know who the other silhouette is, I don't think, but he or she or they or whatever see Emu is suffering and huffing and puffing and says "Joy Boy." So apparently this haki also did something to Eam.
I think this makes the case response? That it's either that or, like I said, it's some sort of feedback loop. Their devil fruits are either connected to each other or they're all Emu's devil fruit, and he's been able to expand its influence somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. Could be like a Horcrux kind of thing for all we know.
That's Emu's attendant, by the way. We have seen them before.
Oh, okay. So
they're basically they're basically the sixth person who's supposed to know that the Emu exists.
All right. Well, that's a small circle. I'll tell you that much. A small summoning circle.
It's getting bigger.
But then, sorry, what?
It's getting bigger.
Yeah, that's true. Who knows what's going to happen next with all the Marines who saw what they saw. But anyway, we'll get to that. The Thousand Sunny finally makes its triumphant landing. Everyone seems to be okay. Luffy sees them and looks like he's about to reunite with them as well. They are celebrating at this point that the monsters are gone. The giants are trying to figure out what any of this really means, though, because the idea of a robot with haki and making people disappear is obviously very confusing to them without more context. And so there's also a little bit of mourning for Atlas and Edison. The implication, of course, that they are for sure totally dead. And then we see Saturn on the shore. So Saturn is the only one left, and he knocks his cane down. He confronts Emmet. And Emmet is really beaten down at this point, and we get another flashback. So Joy Boy says, "Remember Emmet only when the time is right." And Emmet's like, "Time is right." And he says, "I've tied a knot of the greatest of haki and locked it inside your body." So Emmet's kind of fanboying about this like you and I are. He's like, "Wow." And Joy Boy says, "You're going to keep on living long after I'm dead. There will come a day when I can't help you anymore." And then Emmet's just so nice and goofy and funny. And he's like, "What? No." And then Joy Boy says, and when your life is in danger or someone else is in danger, whom you want to protect, that's when the time is right. Go ahead and untie that knot. We also get a fuller picture of Emmet, who looks to be kind of dressed like similar to how the giants are dressed, in my opinion. Also has an X on his arm, which seems to mimic the X on the arms at the end of the Alabasta arc for the Straw Hats. So that could be another connection there. And then Joy Boy says, when the time is right, you'll save me. So apparently Joy Boy kind of has like the future sight haki to end all future sight haki, and saw this coming hundreds of years away. But anyway, he says, that's right. I'll save you all the way from the past, just like I always do, don't I? Oh, no, sorry. I mixed it up. So Emmet is saying, you'll save me. My bad. I've messed that up. Oh, boy. But then he says, that's right. I'll save you all the way from the past, just like I always do, don't I? We see we see a more full silhouette of Joy Boy at this point, kind of a shadowed version of him. Kind of interesting. Like, it has the straw hat, clearly. But then also, we can't tell how big they are. So still could be like a giant, or I mean, maybe not quite a giant, but close to it, or something in between, or maybe a fishman. I mean, that's possible too, right? But anyway, he says, hey, we're talking about a long time in the future, all right? And then Emmet, we cut to the present. He says, I hope I don't get lonely. And then he's like still laughing. So we kind of get a little bit more revelation with Emmet. Still a lot of mystery, though, but what a chapter. Pretty wild.
We have seen Joy Boy.
We've seen Joy Boy, and when the anime gets to this, we'll hear Joy Boy for the first time.
What an idea. I do want to point out, regardless of how tall he is or anything like that, I don't see any webbing in between those fingers, John.
You can't. It's pretty small, Travis. And if you zoom, I see like little dark, little gaps.
I see gaps of clouds, like, just like regular hands.
I just want to make it clear that I think he could be like an Atlantean fishman as well. So very different from the fishermen of today, but I do think that they are seriously connected. And I think that I think it's an Atlantis thing. I'm sticking by that. I'm not calling that an L quite yet. Not until the day comes when we see Joy Boy in all his glory. But can I say, I do think this could be a totally off prediction, but I do feel like they might be, I'm believing this for the first time, we might be moving into a place where we get a little bit more of a flashback here. I know that this part of the flashback is probably done, but I just feel like if Emmet's about to die, like if we get another moment with Saturn and Emmet, I could see us getting even more than this.
There has to be at least one more thing, right? Because, he does the line, right, about like, I hope I don't get lonely, and it kind of transitions back to his current, and he's laughing, and he just so happens to be like in front of Saturn, and they're kind of looking at each other. This is where we get the explanation of why he wasn't Mary Joa 200 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that has to be, we have to get that next, because otherwise that's over and done with, right? Like, we're never going to get that answer.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. And it could be delayed, and it does feel like, I think a lot of people are saying like, this feels like the end of the arc. We're maybe like 1 or 2 chapters away from like the arc transition.
Yeah.
But like the official arc transition, it does seem like we could have like a little moment with the Straw Hats and the Giants, figure out where we're going to go. And then from that point, start to do our check-in around the world, which I don't want to jump super far ahead, but I have a new idea for what they could do for like the final like the 4th road poneglyph arc or saga, whatever they're going to do with it. You want to hear it?
Before we do that, I want to linger here on the Joy Boy panel just because we're talking about it.
Sounds good to me.
We can't tell that he has webbing. I guess we're still leaving that up to discussion, but there is something else about his body that has been the topic of much discussion, and I would like your take on it. Is that a peg leg?
It's hard to say, right? I heard some people saying it looks like a peg leg. And I even thought to myself, does. I mean, maybe he's maybe he's Zeph, Red Zeph, and that's going to be the biggest plot twist in the story. I feel like both feet are pretty thin.
Yeah, it's drawn very thin. It's almost like it's like a skewed silhouette on purpose so that we can't tell. Like, but at the same time, if he's the first pirate, there has to be some kind of stereotype, right?
Right. either the eye patch or and I know
I still want it to be the eye patch. I feel like the eye patch is just the most of course thing, but
because
like it looks like a peg leg.
So many times, right, that like Luffy in all of those covers has had his eye closed. It would finally like bring that home, and it would connect so much with like a lot of the theories about the missing eye of Skypiea, all that stuff that I think would just make total sense. And Joy Boy losing an eye, I mean,
even Luffy's scar, kind of plays into that, right? Like he just barely missed his own eye.
That's right. And it's also interesting how the giant looks so different, like in the past, you know, like way brighter and kind of cuddlier and kind of like a Straw Hat character, quite honestly.
Like a child. It's very childish, right? Like it looks like one of those little, like Oda's always said he was inspired by like the little Viking and everything. That's what I thought when I first saw the little,
like his
little overalls. Yeah. It's kind of
exactly.
He's
cute. When he's asking like time is right and he has like the little question mark, I'd die for him.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly much younger, but like if there's like a spirit in there, it might be like a newly created one, right?
Yeah, I can't wait to get the full Emmet backstory. I just think that he's a charm and a half, but lots of other stuff in this chapter too. I mean, what do you want to cover before?
You had an idea. You had your idea.
Yeah, and I know we kind of walked along the chapter in terms of some of this stuff, but I am kind of wondering, like, what if we got like a God Valley Part 2, where you have the 4 emperors all converge on the same island because they all think that the road poneglyph is there. Because what had me thinking about this was Buggy mostly, which is like, I know I've been kind of thinking that the next logical step is for Shanks and Blackbeard to have a major confrontation and for Shanks to lose. But I think a God Valley Part 2 could be an opportunity to have this huge, wild, insane clash, and you could have Buggy and Shanks have a moment of like reunion, which I feel like we need. I think that Shanks and Buggy, even if they were in a prison cell together, I don't know what it could be, but like having them kind of reunite would be so hilarious, especially if it would come back around to when they were there at Lodestar right before Roger found the One Piece. And if you could do that again, but this time, it's under different circumstances, I just think that's too perfect. So I love the idea of having like all these characters converge wherever it might be. I don't think it would be Elbaf, but it could be Vera, like I know I brought up the other week, and it could be a totally new island we don't know anything about. I don't know, but I think it could be a really fun setup, and it could make the next arc, I mean, just a battle royale. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about kind of like this being a tournament arc, right? Mm-hmm. And at least at the beginning, that kind of seems to be the case. And that could be the next stage of it. Is who's going to make the final? We have to be. It's going to be the next stage of it. And we do have to really start moving along with this, right? We do eventually have to start taking people off the board. We know who's in the running. We have our candidates now. So we have to start moving them off the board next. That's the next thing, right? It's not like all 12 of these people and their various associates are going to show up on Laugh Tale, right? That's not likely what's going to happen. They're going to, we're going to have clashes here and there between now and the end of the story. So I could see something like this happening.
Especially if you have a moment where the Gorosei and Eam decide that they're going to use the ancient weapon to destroy whatever island they're all on. So that's your time limit, because it takes a few days, right, for that to click in. So,
potentially, yeah.
And nobody else knows about that. Only the world government kind of knows how they did that. And so, of course, like the emperors are just going to be like doing their thing. And it could be such a great setup for also, why some of the Marines might go to this island, even though the world government doesn't need them to. It could be a reason for why, Koby and other sword members all go to this place as well to try to get Garp. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. And we see Koby here being like, I gotta stop Luffy, and going to the island in particular, and them having their kind of like Garp and Roger kind of moment on God Valley. And that's where you could get the God Valley flashback. Travis, that's how you could get it. I know they can't do it at the actual God Valley because obviously, but hey, who knows actually? What if they picked it up and moved it somewhere else, Travis? And now it's in the new world.
I mean, yeah, all they had to do was take it off the map, right? They didn't have the means to do what they did to Lucia, hypothetically anyway. So
there's no big hole
until we
there.
see it, until we see a big hole, like it's still technically possible that island is just there somewhere, right?
They moved it. They put it over here, and now we're gonna go back. No, I don't.
Unless it's where Ennie's lobby is. I guess we could potentially, because everybody still wants Ennie's lobby to come back around. I guess that could be where God Valley was. It would be a weird.
I thought it was confirmed that God Valley was in the West Blue.
I think it was, but you know, like you said, they could have moved it or something. I have to throw it out there because it always comes up.
I still think that the fact that Ennie's lobby is so close to Skypiea, that I feel like that's too much of a coincidence, especially if the idea is that like Ennie's lobby and Laughtail are kind of like are each on polar opposite ends of the world, right? I think there's something to that idea, and the idea that like Skypiea is also around there and the other side. I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit because I'm just a little too excited.
It is exciting. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, every single week we have new pieces of information to chew on. Nothing that just like gives the game away or anything. But I mean, we're going to Elbaf, hypothetically. But what awaits us on Elbaf? Who knows at this point? Could be anything.
Yeah, and how are the Giants going to play into this at this point, right? I don't think we have time for, like, we've talked about this before, but like, we're not going to have like the Straw Hats like saving a princess, kind of arc in this. Like, we're not going to do that. But what is it going to be, right? Is it going to be, I think like the most obvious idea is that it's a Zoe type arc that kind of sets up the big one and kind of gives us a sense of, some answers to some big questions. Jaguar Hisal, of course, coming into play, Prince Loki coming into play, and something that directs the Straw Hats to the man marked by flames.
That's what we thought this was going to be, though, right?
Yeah,
like we
sort
thought
of.
That's what this was going to be.
That this was going to be a Zoe. I mean, I think that we talked. I remember you and I were talking about this the first time we were doing Ricky Pirate Radio. At that point, we were a little bit into Egghead. I think we were like 10, 15 chapters in. And I think you and I talked about how this was feeling a lot like a combination of Savati Archipelago and Punk Hazard. The obvious parallel to Punk Hazard being the Vegapunk stuff. So it's like, you have some action, you have some stuff, but really it's like setting up the stakes for the what's going to happen with Doflamingo, what's going to happen with Kaido and Big Mom. And this does seem like that. It's an epic arc, but it's still kind of a lot of setup too. And just in terms of like more so than Zoe, like Zoe is a different kind of setup arc, I think. It was more sort of like getting the band back together.
Yeah, it's a lore dump. Like we were expecting just kind of a lore dump arc, I think, a lot of people, and we did not get that at all. I mean, we did, but there was a lot
lore
attached
dumps,
to that.
but it was a lot of show not tell in many cases. Was there anything else you wanted to cover off? I know we kind of talked about the Gorosei stuff as we went, and just in general, a lot of stuff as we went. The idea of ancient haki being a thing, and Joy Boy's haki. The idea of like haki being able to be stored in something. Travis, oh gosh, who talked about that?
Discuss this? Who discussed this?
Wait, wasn't there something that our old pal John Negroni said about Luffy's hat containing haki, and he was laughed
how it hasn't been damaged
out of the Discord?
Since that fight with has it been damaged at all over the years since that fight with Buggy way back?
Yeah, and usually people are like, "Oh yeah, because Nami fixes it after every arc." Like, okay, I'm sure sure, Jan.
But no, because the stitching has always been there. Like where it was originally damaged and she fixed it. That's still technically there. Oda just doesn't always draw it. But like, it's not like there's new wounds on it. So we've talked about this, that like, it is a hat made of straw. Something has to be holding this thing together, right?
And I vote haki. And the one time that it was like damaged, it wasn't connected to Luffy, right? He wasn't wearing it. It was like off of his head.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like it being connected to Luffy in some way, or Luffy kind of, whoever can wear the hat brings out what's so great about it. I think there's something to that. There's got to be something going on with this hat, Travis.
His and I mean, you think about, we'd have to go back and trace all of this, and let me tell you, I'm tempted to do so. But like in Alabasta, when he fights Crocodile, he takes the hat off. When he fights Arlong, he takes the hat off. Like there's these early periods of time where he's not wearing it, more or less to deal with the whole does it get hurt thing. That doesn't happen in the time skip era, right? Where he knows how to do haki. So, you know. That being said, we have had it established that you can you can tie power to knots. We saw that with Weatheria. I always forget the dang scientist's name with Nami, but like the wind knots, the more you untie, the more powerful the wind gets. So it kind of was set up as a concept, but I do think this does lend credence to like black swords, for example, being haki infused rather than something else, right?
Yeah, this does bring up, what some perceive as a plot hole, of course, that the world government wasn't more ferociously after Luffy when they heard of somebody who had a straw hat and all this. Or you could even connect that to like Shanks and Roger, I guess, of like if Joy Boy also wore the straw hat, like why it wasn't the world government more proactive. And then you and I have already addressed this, of course. We're like, because it's hubris, it's ego, it's to them, these are just insects. How could insects ever make a difference? And they don't act until it's like way too late. To them, it's like, oh yeah, it seems like some trouble. I don't want to deal with it. Give them, 30 million berry bounty or whatever, and that should solve that. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's hubris, right? Like he wasn't a threat until now.
Mm-hmm. Famous last words.
Famous last words.
Anything else before we go into some comments? We don't have a lot since it's Sunday.
Since it is Sunday, I think the only thing that I want to call out is a lot of people have made the kind of misreading of Joy Boy looks exactly like Luffy because there was some mistranslation and some things we will not say we have or have not read here. But the official translation pretty much seems to confirm, and I would say this is the case with Zunesha as well, that it's less about Luffy looks exactly like Joy Boy, and it's more about the form that he takes on with Gearfifth and about the drums of liberation, the heartbeat sound. Those are familiar. They're nostalgic. They invoke those memories. We're talking about a title here still. We're not talking about like reincarnation. We're not talking about like a chosen one narrative necessarily. But it is, it's not that like, at least for right now, Luffy doesn't look exactly like Joy Boy, right? To your point, why didn't they go just chase this guy down if that was the case? So I that's kind of a misnomer I've seen going around. We still don't know what Joy Boy looks like. He could still technically be a fishman. I have to entertain that theory because I can't disprove it, right? Can't prove a negative. So
yeah, you're biding your time. It's that same concept of, think of Joy Boy as it's Superman. If somebody dons the blue tights and the red underwear and the cape, like, of course, they're going to be compared to the Superman from like 100 years ago because it's an archetype. It's a, Joy Boy, if anything, it sounds like the name of a costumed hero. And the costume in this case is Nika, the sun god Nika. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Which I did hear an interesting theory just to try to piece all of the, like, what does Joy Boy look like? Where does this all fit together kind of thing. So the hat that Emu has, very big. Mm-hmm. We've been trying to figure this out. Like, how is the hat big versus what does Joy Boy look like in these silhouettes versus all this stuff? I have heard it floated that the hat might not be Joy Boy's. The hat might be the actual Nika's, and we're actually talking about two different generations altogether, which is an interesting thought. That Nika did exist as a giant and was the original and then inspired somebody to want to be like him, or he originated the fruit somehow through his wishes or something like that, and then that hat kind of becomes this icon as a part of the Nika identity. And since Joy Boy was very much specifically representing Nika, maybe that's why he wore a straw hat, was as a part to your point about you have to wear the costume and the tights, right? So you have to have the straw hat. Maybe that's what it is. And then that's just kind of been lost in translation over time. That's an interesting idea because it does give this a lot more legacy. And again, does more to help us dodge the Chosen One accusations, because anything we can do to get away from that. Again, this is why I don't want Joy Boy to just look like Luffy, because come on, we don't want to do that. That's not what this is about. So, it's an interesting idea to play with.
Yeah, I mean, and then you could say oh yeah, so then that means that Luffy's hat really is Joy Boy's hat that he's wearing now. And so it went from Joy Boy to Roger to Shanks to Luffy. So, and then somebody in between, if if they ever get to more of that history, because we still haven't gotten really like, how did Roger get his straw hat? Are they going to reveal that it's just, he just picked it up at a thrift store? You know, there's nothing else to it. I would be fine with that personally. But okay. So we have a comment here. Melvin96 says, out of all the times they showed Conqueror's haki, it would be great if someone was strong enough to KO vice admirals. I guess, but I mean, I don't know. They're vice admirals. There was once upon a time, Smoker was just a captain, right? So like, Smoker was tougher than East Blue Luffy. So I don't know. I think that it's fair that vice admirals. I know they've been nerfed a bit, but
it's one of those things where it's not you get KO'd or it doesn't affect you, right? It's you get KO'd if you can't resist it. It's a lot like Bleach spiritual pressure in that regard, where like, you know, even if it doesn't like stop you from what you're doing, you still feel it. It's like a force of nature. You can resist the wind, but like if you don't weigh a lot, you know, like a piece of paper is going to just flow away, but you weigh more than a piece of paper, right? That kind of thing. It's like a vice admiral is just inherently stronger. That doesn't mean like Dahl was like pinned down. You didn't see any of the vice admirals like moving or anything like that. It completely nullified Gorosei powers. I think it's still pretty potent.
I agree. Tagahanga said, also, the Iron Giant is like an actual living organism here, or just a sentient metal machine? Man, Luffy has ways to go to reach that level of haki mastery. Not even the elders were resistant to that. Wonder what's up with Saturn, though. Edit, even Eam was shaken down to his or her knees from Joy Boy's haki. So, first thing there with the Iron Giant, seems to be like a sentient robot. Yeah, I think that like metal machine, or I think you kind of talked to like maybe possessed by a spirit or something. I still like the idea of like the Iron Giant being connected to like wars in some way. I think that could be kind of funny, but with like the horns. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just like maybe a race, like a robo race that could be totally unique and different.
We still have a lot about the technology to learn, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we're ready to learn about it. That's for sure. And yes, Luffy still having a haki mastery to aspire to, I think is such a great read here, because we do still need to show that he's not, he's at 4 Emperor level, but there's still, you know, more that Luffy needs to figure out about haki for him to essentially reach that king status, right? You know, Gear 5th has its pluses, but what Joy Boy was able to do with that haki, it's another level, right? Like Luffy, I'm assuming he was using Conqueror's haki throughout those fights. I think he used it when he tried to stomp down Top Man, but was unsuccessful, right? And let's be fair, he wasn't able to beat Kaido in a full-on haki off, right? His haki ultimately wasn't able to, you know, go all the way with Kaido. It wasn't until Gear 5th came in that he was able to seal the deal. So, yes. There you go.
Yeah, Gear 5th is broken, but it just opened, like that's power scaling, right? It just opens the door for somebody new to come in and, you know, set the bar higher, which is what's kind of happened here.
Right. We gotta break him all over again. And then, the whole thing about like what's up with Saturn, we already talked about how it seems pretty clear. Yeah, he showed up there in person, so he wasn't succumbing to the summoning circle and all that. Oh, man. Fun stuff. Brenny, my old boy, said, fantastic chapter, and Egghead was a top 5 arc for me. Best arc post-timeskip. That's interesting. You and I haven't really done a ranking of like post-timeskip arcs, and I think that recency bias is a thing. I don't think there's any way for me to say how I truly feel about this arc until it's over. That said, I do think it's up there for me in terms of best arcs of post-time skip. It's got to be for me for me, my favorite ones have been Wano. I just think Wano was just such a grand time, particularly the way the anime handled it. And then after that, probably Whole Cake Island. Egghead's in the mix. It's got to be for me. Are you in the same feeling, or are you, you know?
I mean, you know me. I have the controversial opinion of really enjoying Dressrosa in the manga specifically. You know, I have my takes about the anime all day long, but you know, I've always adored Dressrosa. It's a big battle royale storyline. It brings back Sabo. It has the Law flashback, which is just one of the best flashbacks in the series. Even, and Egghead has a lot of that same stuff, so that definitely plays into it. I think, if I'm being, you know, fair and balanced to TMCR, the death game really didn't work as much as we wanted it to. We were definitely overthinking that a lot. So much to the point where even Oda was kind of like, maybe we just move this along kind of situation.
Exactly.
And to his credit, he caught that pretty much immediately and got it resolved, right? This isn't a thing where like we dragged for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then eventually like we set it up, and then he's like, okay, let's cut away to the cool stuff. It's that same kind of like supernova pivot in Sabaody, right? Like he just kind of realized really quickly, oh, we need something else to give this some gas. And so the end result has been very successful. But I think that's worth keeping in mind here in like, oh, it's the best thing. I mean, Wano is just that arc that could have been, it's itself its own series, right? That would have been its own entire manga by somebody else, just Wano alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like, it's hard to even compare anything else at this point when it comes to like structure and depth and everything. Like Oda just decided to write a whole other series in the middle of his series, and like that's wild to think about still.
Yeah. For me, Wano stands out, especially for the Odin flashback. It's just such a mythic flashback, and ultimately, like the introduction of Gear 5th Luffy and how that seals the fight. I mean, it's just truly one of my favorite fights in the whole series, particularly through the manga, and the anime too just amplifies so much of it.
It does. It's got some of the best moments in it. One of my favorite things in anything of the series is the beginning of the raid when they're sneaking in, or they're supposed to be sneaking in, and Luffy sees them spilling the red bean soup everywhere, and he snaps. He just loses it. And Zoro goes to yell at him for blowing their cover and messing up the plan like he always does. And Luffy just turns around and says, they're wasting the food. And Zoro's like, oh, yep. No, we got to cut these guys up now. When you're right, you're right. Yeah. It's like, people say that like the Straw Hats don't get a lot of character stuff because not every arc is about like their character growth. This arc, for example, wasn't like a big Frankie arc. And I think that's going to be at the end of the end of all of this disappointing for some folks. But like those moments still happen. The Straw Hats progression has to be so slow because they're in everything, right? We have to do all of Momonosuke's character growth in Wano because he's not going to be on the ship forever. But like Zoro is, so we can just do these little hints of who he is here and there and here and there. And then that builds his character over time. That's why we love these characters so much is time. So Wano gave us so much more of that time than anything else, which is just, again, insane to think about.
Yeah. And in my last word on just how Egghead stands apart, I mean, to what you're saying, it has so much of what made Wano great without a lot of the shortcomings, right? I mean, all the arcs have their weaknesses, but I think the weaknesses in Egghead are pretty limited. And even the death game stuff, I mean, at the very least, even the anime has kind of shown you get some cool fights out of it. And like you said, it just kind of wraps it up. And then if you just kind of combine the Kuma flashback with everything with like the Reverie or like what really happened during the Reverie. And of course the Garp versus Kuzan and Kid getting wrecked and Law like stepping up against Blackbeard. I mean, it's like so epic, to me, It's like, I want to say like, yeah, I mean, Egghead just kind of rules in terms of the other arcs. But yeah, we did just kind of read it over the last couple of years. And, last feather in its cap is that it didn't overstay its welcome. That's for sure. The pacing was so good and there was so much to enjoy week to week that I never felt the length. And so now and we're reaching what feels like the natural conclusion. And I haven't been like, can we move on, please? Like, no, I've been like, all right, I'm enjoying the ride. Let's see how you finish this out, Oda Sensei. Let's go. But yeah,
I do think that if we had gotten Egghead like a decade ago for whatever reason, like Oda, didn't drag things out in other places or anything like that, we definitely would have gotten the Kuma flashback like right alongside the death game, and that would have been all we got, and it would have been like the most like mixed bag reaction because you'd have the really, really good Kuma flashback and then the less good death game stuff.
Well, we would have gotten an awesome Robin fight though, apparently, that we didn't get to see.
I mean, potentially, but you think about it, it is just like, oh, yeah, Oda has definitely evolved and honed his craft over time, for sure. I think that's why each arc just feels like the next best arc. He's just better than he was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I do wonder, too, if, he had everything for the death game kind of figured out, and if he might do like a filler kind of thing with it. I don't know, because so far the anime hasn't been doing much filler at all. So that's just a guess. And like, not that we would get like 5 or 6 episodes, but like 1 or 2 that could kind of fill in the gaps or give us a little bit more information, because we really don't know exactly what happened. It's all just kind of assumed, but that's fine. I don't think we need to know, so I'm fine with us just kind of keeping it going. So far, the anime's been pretty good about not needing to do entire filler arcs, which has been nice.
Yeah, these days they'll like do a pause if they can and do like a quick recap of things for people's sanity, which is not the worst use of time for a weekly show like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's better than, like putting the filler into the canon, and so we can't escape it if we don't want it. Anyway, so Snicker Snack said, are we getting a flashback or are we just getting teased? If Emmet dies here, Zunisha might be the closest to start a flashback. I agree with that. I think that's a good call. Snicker Snack also says, can't believe we get to see Weatheria tech and stored haki combined. So yeah, Travis, there you go. Another person on your side there. And then continues, another practical use of haki. If one can touch a devil fruit user, then one can also undo a devil fruit transformation, it seems. So side note, yeah, we've seen that with Law being able to undo the devil fruit used on him to turn him into a woman. And then only one who comes close to Joy Boy's haki level seems to be Shanks when he canceled Ryogoku's devil fruit form back in Wano. I can't recall anyone who's done that before. I don't even know if it's that he reverted Green Bull's form, but more so that he just scared the dude. And so he just like...
He restrained him. That's what it was. Like,
is that what it was?
Like I said, again, it was,
I guess I misread
it was pressure. Like, it wasn't that like he undid anything necessarily, because like he's more of a Logia user anyway, but like just the presence of that haki literally held him in place. Did it KO him? No, because he's strong, but he's not so strong that he doesn't feel that presence. And, weighing his options, he chose not to pick that fight because of how powerful it was. That's how it works.
That only makes me wonder then, like, how is Blackbeard going to be able to beat Shanks if that's really where they're going with it? I feel like Blackbeard can't do it by himself. Probably shenanigans and the ganging up upon.
Yep, that's how he's always won.
Yeah, it's going to be like all 10 Titanic captains against Shanks, because he doesn't have a devil fruit, so he doesn't have that weakness to Blackbeard's darkness thing. Anyway,
remember, Blackbeard doesn't fight fair. That's like he's kind of like perceived as the traitor, right? Because he doesn't earn it. He didn't inherit the will necessarily.
Snicker Snack said, wonder how respawning from the summoning circle works, since Mars flew back a few chapters before. Thought it's a straightforward transportation, but they had to come back. So yeah, we talked about this. Definitely seems like Luffy and Bonnie were able to replicate at least a morsel of the level of conquerors that it took to undo Mars's transformation. We just didn't know it at the time. That said,
I would even say that you were right before it. It's a range thing. That like the combined attack pushed him out of the range of the summoning circle, and I like that, brought him back
better, but I'm just sort of like, I don't know for sure. So it's like, it's hard to say because we didn't get a good sense of how far he got launched.
Just because he was there already. I mean, whatever happened, it happened when he got pushed back, but it does answer the question of why he didn't fly back.
Yeah, and because like of all the characters, it can't be that like you have to take a certain amount of damage, I don't think, like just in general, because other characters have taken way more damage, particularly Saturn. And well, I guess technically Saturn wouldn't have been sent back actually. So, never mind. I feel like I disproved myself within a sentence. So yeah, I guess it could be that too. Who knows? And then the last thing Snickersack says is, guess the only thing stronger than Luffy's slippers is the straw hat. That one had too many battles. LOL. So yeah, very fun. And then Ignitia said, Giant Robo was a true homie. Rest in peace, Emmet. We don't know if Emmet's going to be dead yet. We don't know. Maybe Saturn is going to take him in for questioning. I like him too much. I don't want him to die. He's cute. He's my buddy.
I think they're going to talk because Saturn loves to talk.
Yeah, he likes to do his speeches. And it's not like Emmet's an insect, right? I mean, he's from the Void Century. He's a ancient robot. I don't know. Jocular Tasks 02 said, a comic magazine newspaper. Never mind, this is just gibberish. Kenshin Goku said, guys, after seeing last night's One Piece episode with Garp and his haki, now we see Joy Boy's haki. One thing for sure we know is Luffy still has a lot of work when it comes to haki. I really want Garp to train Luffy in using haki better. You can make Ki Blast explosions out of haki Garp and even store haki to make a bomb like Joy Boy. Could you imagine what Luffy's potential can be with haki? He has a strong lineage of being a D. Next arc, please go rescue your grandpa, Luffy. So here's what I think. I don't think Luffy needs to be trained. And I don't think he's going to go after Garp. I don't think he cares. But also, I think that it's going to be a coincidence if he runs into him. I think Luffy has seen it firsthand, and that's how he learns. He's going to do it himself. Like that's his character.
Yep,
he needed
100%.
training with Rayleigh, but that's done. He doesn't need more training. No thanks. He's an emperor. What emperor needs a training?
Even the training with Rayleigh is
pretty hands-off.
Less about it's less about being taught, and it's more like getting put in the position you need to be to learn for your own sake. Like, that's kind of been what it has been for Luffy this whole time, is he learns best by kind of being in the thick of the fire. And Rayleigh even explained back when he defined haki for all of us, is that that's how people train their haki generally, is they're the strongest because they put themselves out there the most. Again, that's what I mean when I say like Blackbeard doesn't earn it. He has to do subterfuge and stuff, which makes the fact that he does have powerful haki very interesting.
Black Knight Halberd 42 said, it can be hard to get me to care about lore, but I'm consistently a sucker for anything Joy Boy related. Quote, predecessor heroes, end quote, are just a master key trope for me, I guess. And fusing armament haki into swords and such is nothing new, but hiding a conqueror's haki nuke inside a knotted rope that persists for nearly a millennium is on another level. I love it. Even with the heights Luffy has soared to, there's so much farther to go. That technique must be super draining, because what was stopping Joy Boy from becoming the haki Unabomber? I imagine sneaking one of those into a Celestial Dragon's tribute or something. They take it to Mary Joa and Kaboom. Actually, that'd be a great parallel to the box from Fishman Island at Big Mom's wedding. Now I really hope the final attack on Mary Joa begins like that. LMAO. Rest in peace, Emmet, the giant robot. We didn't know you for long, but long enough to know you were a true homie. Agreed on that last point. That kind of gets me thinking, Travis. Like, is that why the Iron Giant went to Mary Joa to set off a nuke?
That was what I was going to say just now. Did he go there because that was the time? Did he go there to try to save Joy Boy and was going to activate it?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Because we talked about
him
that.
realizing Joy Boy wasn't there and being like, oh, Joy Boy's not here. I thought he would be here. And like the idea that like that's where they were supposed to meet, or Joy Boy was already dead. Who knows? And he doesn't have a good concept of time, because he's a homie, but he's not our smart homie. He's not the brains of the operation. That's fine. We love him anyway.
That's exactly my thought. Yep.
Inimitable Uman said, the best OP chapter in a very long time, and with that cover tribute to boot. J86 said, kind of was hoping to see Saint Saturn be defeated. I mean, he was defeated. And that's something else I did actually want to bring up. I'm glad they mentioned this. So the Gorosei lost here. The broadcast got out. So much of it got out, like they stopped it, but they're just mitigating damage that's already been done. Luffy and the others all got away. The only deaths, like they killed Vegapunk, but there's still a Vegapunk alive. And the whole world knows all this stuff. They lost. And Saturn, I think, is in this weird position where he's surrounded by all these Marines who, guess what, have seen the Gorosei, have seen the yokai seeming forms. I could still see like a great cleansing, like something pretty messed up going down and being blamed on the Straw Hats, like I know you and I have talked about endlessly. So anything can happen, especially if these guys are desperate and are like, we got to do something to clean house here. And wiping out a bunch of Marines would serve the story. It would be sad, but it would also, be one of those things that motivates the survivors and motivates the people who know that this happened to be like, all right, the world government is unhinged. Like they have gone way too far and something needs to be done.
Yeah, this is a stalemate. We don't get many of these in One Piece. There's usually like a defeat or Luffy knocks a guy out, but this is just a stalemate.
It's like Whole Cake.
No, like the
humiliation is the defeat. Like Big Mom was humiliated ultimately.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like the news will probably report this as like something very not great for Luffy, but it will probably still be perceived as a win for him. But realistically, like it was a stalemate. Like they couldn't hurt these guys. They lost most of the Vegapunks. Like it's not like the Straw Hats heard this message or anything. And if anything, the Vegapunk's message does them a disservice because they were kind of ahead of the curve, and now they have a lot more competition.
Yeah, exactly. And we had more comments than I thought. I think just more have been rolling in. Hero2Anime said, wow, love the callback of the weather rope that we saw before the time skip. And to think we got some voice work of Joy Boy coming. I feel worrisome about how the next arc will play out as the Straw Hats are at Elbaf. If Egghead showed us the fights that happened at the same time that didn't involve the Straw Hats, Koby, Law, and Kid, Then the next arc will have Blackbeard invading Wano or Fishman Island to get the weapons once Caribou tells them. And it's obvious that Oda is setting up a big fight between Luffy and Koby. Now, while if that's at the final island or dealing with Blackbeard is not certain, but something tells me that Teach has an inkling of aim, because after seeing the anime where he barters for his pirate nation to be under the world government, he's aiming for Mary Joa. I mean, look at what he did just to get Whitebeard's tremor powers. He'll probably abandon the nation plan as soon as he gets the weapons and wipe out one of the elder gods. And that smoker pick with the letters of Hero Academia spewing, was that really from Kohei when he was younger? No, as we said, it was a redraw. So it's sort of what he drew when he was younger. But yeah,
it's very close. I can't remember what volume it's in, but
it looks
you can
more
go
like
see it.
Post-timeskip smoker though, and it is. The
is.
original was like the original smoker. So you should look it up.
Yeah. It's updated, but like the pose is pretty 1-to-1. Like it's fun. You don't get to see this that often, but it is always fun when a mangaka draws someone else's character, and it's more interesting that this is a character Oda created and is kind of recreating with the passage of time. Very fun.
But yeah, in terms of the ancient weapon thing, I do think, because this brings up something interesting. Would that mean that we wouldn't get a God Valley Part 2 because Blackbeard would go to Wano or Fishman Island? I think that's coming, but I think he would want to go to the road poneglyph first, because that is more in competition. He has information nobody else has, but first of all, Caribou's not right there yet, so we don't know how long it's going to take for him to get that information. But I think that he's going to be more motivated to go to get the last poneglyph himself before everybody else does. And if anything, if he was going to do some stuff with the ancient weapons, I think he would probably send 1 or 2 Titanic captains to take care of that. So it could be a situation where we don't even get like Blackbeard's full crew at God Valley. Who knows? Who knows though? But that said, it's also a good opportunity too for us to get Law back into the story. I was thinking about this, and what if Law and Beppo end up back in Wano? Because they're not that far away from Wano. So if we do go back there and the ancient weapon stuff happens, it'd be interesting if Law was involved to that extent. And I know we still have to figure out what happens with Kid, if anything, at all. Yeah. But that would be a Straw Hat thing, I guess, because he's at Elbaf. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I do want to posit that if Blackbeard is, a descendant of Zebek or inherited his will or anything, it is entirely possible that is where our God Valley flashback is. It's attached to Blackbeard, and it ties into his origin. Because we still don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't. And we also don't know if we can handle another 2 weeks without a new chapter. But we'll have to, because we're done here. And so 11/23, we do have a break this coming week. And I know we've been hinting at a My Hero Academia thing. Of course, if you are of that kind of, disposition, is that what it is? Where you want to hear Travis and maybe a special guest who is not me, who actually is caught up on My Hero, or just like a general My Hero conversation. I could get into that because I'm not caught up, but I'm pretty far along in it. Stay tuned for that. We might be able to make that happen. But in the meantime, thanks so much for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. One other thing you can do for us, if you've listened all the way to the end, you must like us for some reason. Thank you. But also, if you haven't already, you can help support us in a very easy, simple way. You could leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts, or the same thing on Spotify. And Spotify is also a fun place where you can interact with us too, because they have comments now. Of course, we'd love to have you in the Discord even more, because then you get to hang out with our whole community. And of course, if you send us an email, we love reading those, especially if we could read them aloud on the show. So there you go, and we'll see you all again. And Travis, the time was right, but I think now the time is over.
Yep, as like all things, time is passing.